All right, I think that did it. I don't know. I'm dumb. It's totally my fault. But hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast Twitch channel. My name is Michael, and we are here tonight for Detention Live. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Chris. Chris, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
If anyone is new watching tonight, Chris is also the game master of the Redemption Star Wars Actual Play podcast, and you can find him on Twitter at Burlew_Chris.
Absolutely.
And then joining us tonight is our special guest co-host. We have Kevin Stacy, who is the host and the game master of the Game Night Heroes podcast. So, Kevin, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for having me, Michael. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And again, where can they find your podcast? Give us give us the elevator pitch. What is it?
Absolutely. Well, we are, actual play podcast. We're playing tabletop role-playing games, myself and 4 players, and we're just telling really good stories. We're very story-driven, narrative-based, and you can find us on 9 different platforms right now. Anchor is our main hub we're at right now, but we also do Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, pretty much any place you can find podcasts, we're there.
Excellent. And you have a Twitter for the show?
Yep, at the show, it's at Game Night Hero, and we also have a website, GameNightHeroes.com.
Excellent. All right. That's good branding. All right. So we're going to kick things off as we often do here with our extracurricular. And this is where we just talk about things we've been up to lately. This could be a movie we've watched, TV show, books we've read, music, talk a walk in the park. It really can be anything that you feel like sharing with us and with any potential audience. Chris, I'll start with you tonight. What have you been up to, buddy?
Well, main things besides work, still doing scouting stuff as always. I started watching Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix.
I watched 1 episode. I'm curious of your take.
I've enjoyed it. It's definitely a very neat twist on superheroes.
Okay.
And the code of superheroes and some morality behind it. Very human. They very humanize the superheroes right off the bat. They're not all perfect, and they're not Superman. They're a little more towards Batman, but not as mopey. But anyways, if I go into more detail, it spoils it for you. But I've really enjoyed it. I think I'm only on episode 5, but I'm definitely hooked. I'm hoping it's more than 1 season, and they keep building up the backstory. They do some really cool flashbacks and kind of building up to how superpowers were discovered, however you want to say it. So that's been pretty neat. Watching Bad Batch. If you're a Star Wars fan, like this nerd, Bad Batch has been awesome. I'm also a big Clone Wars Order 66 fan, so it's set right in that kind of timeline. It's been neat to kind of watch how they've developed the entire Clone Wars series right up into Order 66 and then into Bad Batch. I'm curious to see where that goes. I mean, there's only 2 episodes, but it's been entertaining so far.
Yeah, I imagine that Jupiter's Legacy will get a second season, only because I know Netflix has a developmental deal with the creator. Is it Mark Millar? It's Mark Miller. Mark Miller, yeah. They paid buku millions of dollars just to get his entire library of stuff. So they're kind of in business with him. So I would imagine if it does well at all, they'll want to recoup that investment. But obviously it depends on how well it does. But I think it was trending as like one of the top shows when it first released. So it's got some eyeballs on it.
So I've really enjoyed it. Otherwise, I'm almost fully staffed at work. I replaced people that left because of the computer system, and then the boss approved me to hire 1 more person.
Nice.
So exciting for me because now I get to add more people. And maybe a couple new product lines we're talking about, but that'll get boring if I sit here and start talking to you about medical equipment.
All right.
Kevin, what have you been up to?
Yeah, Kevin.
I loving life. I just finished. I've got a couple different things going on. I just finished Falcon and Winter Soldier the other day. Yeah, it was good. It was. I love how Marvel's got such a high standard that they've got right now that they can back off, be a little more lazy with their storytelling. I think is what I felt with Winter Soldier. Don't anybody hate me, but it was okay. I mean, there were certain things about it I didn't like, certain things I did like, but that's anything anymore. But good overall. The dynamic between the 2 leads is awesome, so that's fun. But so that's been a good time. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm binging the Magnus archives right now. I'm not sure if you guys have ever listened to that. It's a wild ride. It actually just ended, so I'm a little behind the curve. But it's kind of like an X-Files, World of Darkness-y kind of thing. They're like archiving these weird, creepy stories, and the things that go bump in the night are bumping back kind of thing. So it's a wild ride, though. It's pretty cool. So been listening to that. Really enjoy that.
Nice.
So a quick shout out to Dirty Habanero for joining us tonight. Happy to have you. Looks like there's a few other people who are watching. Lurkers are always welcome, but if you do feel like saying hello in chat, we really enjoy that as well. Later in the show, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions if you are particularly interested in hearing our opinions on things, because, I don't know why anyone would, but maybe you would. Anything else, Kevin, that you'd like to talk about?
That's really it. Just as Chris was saying, I do the work thing and do the family thing, just staying busy, trying to make it through the COVID haze.
Yeah. I mean, we're finally starting to see what looks like the other side of this.
Oh yeah.
But we're not out of the woods yet. Again, chickens hatching. I don't want to count them yet, but it seems like we're in the right direction. So I'm really excited about that.
For sure.
I've got a whole bunch of things going on. I don't want to talk about all of them because it will get boring. But I will, of course, mention Action 12 Cinema, which is the RPG that I'm designing and hope to bring to Kickstarter later this year. We had a really fun playtest a couple days ago. Got some great feedback. And we're going to do another playtest tomorrow. Chris is going to be in that one. He's not played it yet, so I'm looking forward to having him at the table. And I'm not going to incorporate the feedback I got last time because I want another group to see if the same things come up. And if they do, then that probably will tell me that, yes, these are changes that are needed. If not, then maybe it was just situational to that game. But I'm really excited about it. Again, obviously, I'm nervous. I'm going to go to Kickstarter and like 2 people will show up. But I don't know. I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to other people getting their hands on and see how it goes. I'm watching The Nevers on HBO. That's the show I've been into. I think there's 5 episodes out so far, and I'm really liking it. It is a Joss Whedon created and at least first season directed, produced show. And as much as I love most of the things Joss Whedon has done, it sounds like he's a garbage human being, and that kind of makes me feel a little. I also. The John Walker Shield, end of season episode 4 was like apex for me. I love
mind-blowing.
That. Mind-blowing. But then I don't know that what they did immediately after that lived up to that level.
Right.
Smallville, I just wrapped up season 2 of that Smallville podcast I started. Welcome, GuyGar68. Happy to have you here. Oh, our stream died.
No.
Quick, get the defib. Clear.
Out the mouth.
Okay, apparently it's back. So yeah, my the numbers on my screen didn't change, so I don't know why it didn't. It doesn't look like my internet went out. It might have been a Twitch thing. So we will carry on because again, the YouTube version and the audio only version will still be coming out. But thank you for letting us know. So I think maybe Jupiter's Legacy was the last thing people heard from you, Chris. So. Again, the audio-only people will catch it. But again, Smallville, Farm to Fable, my season 2 just wrapped up, so I'm gearing up for season 3. I've watched the first 17 episodes of season 3 of Smallville in the last week. I'm trying to get through the entire season just in as quick as I can, and then go back and start watching them one at a time, taking my notes for the actual recordings. Because last season, I started forgetting things. It's like they would set a thing up, and I'm like, I don't really remember how this pays off, and we're supposed to be a show about that show. Right. I should not forget those things. So I'm trying to do it a little bit differently this time to help me do a better job of hosting the show. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. We're slowly gaining an audience. We're up to like 40, 50 downloads per episode right now, which obviously is way tiny compared to this show, but also this show is 10 years old, and that one's barely 1. But I think that's enough of things for me. So we will move on. So the next thing we like to do here is our first improv game, and that is 10 things. And this is a game where we will prompt one another to try to come up with a list of 10 things that fit the prompt. The idea here is immediacy over accuracy. So 10 bad things that you get quickly is better for the game than 10 things that really fit the prompt very well. Kevin, you are our guest tonight. Would you like to go first, second, or third in terms of being the one giving the list?
I got a list. I'll give you a list right away. Sure.
Okay.
I'll start it off.
So I will prompt you. You will
Okay.
then prompt Chris, and then Chris will
All right.
close the loop with me. Okay. So
Okay.
hopefully this will work for you. I'm, as someone who has named multiple things, podcast related, I am always just curious about that. I think it's fun. So the name of your podcast is Game Night Heroes.
Oh yeah.
I'm willing to bet that that wasn't the first name you came up with.
Right.
So
It was not.
give me 10 alternative titles, and these could be things that you actually thought of or just new things.
Sure.
10 titles for your podcast if Game Night Heroes didn't work out.
All right. There was Howl Heroes. There was
What?
Intrepid
One.
Dice.
2,
There
Two.
was Dice Masters.
3,
3,
Just Game Night.
4,
4,
There was Dice Rollers.
5,
5.
And some of these actually we found out there's other people who have them. That's why they didn't work. Geez, what else was there? That's 5. Oh, geez.
That's 5. You're halfway there. You did great.
Yeah, we did. There was Intrepid Dice. I said that. There was Roll to Podcast.
6,
6.
There was Roll to Roll.
7.
With
Okay.
2 different spellings. There was Dice Capades.
8. I actually like that one a lot.
Oh, right on. There was geez, what were some other ones? Oh, geez, I need 2 more. There was Dice Friends. I don't know. We didn't make that up.
Yeah.
And the Lost Dice Roll. I don't know.
10. Yay!
Yay.
That was, in fact, 10 things. Thank you very much, Kevin, for playing our
Thank
reindeer
you.
game. All right. Now you get to prompt Chris for his list of 10 things.
All right, Chris. I thought about this long and hard today. So, what are
It's one of us.
what are 10 unlikely items that would be a Lich's phylactery?
Ooh, smelly tennis shoe,
1,
Okay.
an egg,
2,
my pocket,
3,
my hand,
4,
really small pebbles,
5,
a church,
6,
let's see, a Bible,
7,
and we'll go a paladin sword,
8,
a paladin,
9,
and Michael's familiar.
10. Yay!
Yay.
That was, in fact, 10 things. All right, Chris, what you got for me, buddy?
I've been playing with one. Give me 10 things that would make bad poker chips.
Fingers,
1,
toes,
2,
ice chips,
3,
M&Ms,
4,
Skittles.
5,
I wanted more. I keep can't. Chocolate chips. Got to throw that in there too.
6,
Adamantium claws.
7,
Whatever that really heavy metal that Thor's hammer's made out of.
8,
Water.
9,
Dreams.
10.
Yay!
Yay!
That was, in fact, 10 things.
10
Awesome.
things.
All right, so now we're going to move into sort of the meat and potatoes of the show. This is called Used Books, and this is where we're going to talk about a campaign that one of us either played or ran and try to mine that campaign for some ideas, either things that went really well that we've carried forward and we try to do in new games, or maybe something that we tried that didn't work so well and we've avoided it since. Kevin, you are our guest tonight. Would you mind sharing a campaign with us?
Absolutely. I've always been very narrative driven with the stuff that I run as a dungeon master, game master, either capacity. And when I first started out, I always thought that the best way in order to facilitate your story was to try to plan for that story. But I kind of did it too much when I first started. And what I mean by that would be I would set into motion things such as prophecies, destinies, certain goals having to be met. And what I ended up finding as I played was that the more I did that, the more there was an inherent propensity for the players to want to go completely against that.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Absolutely.
An example was I ran a game one time where it was kind of pseudo inspired by the Legacy of Kain series and Prince of Persia. So there was some time travel involved, and there was a lot of stuff that was foreshadowed. Like, for example, there was these enemies who were hunting the heroes, and the big plot twist was it was actually the heroes from the future kind of thing. But what happened would be I would have scenarios where they would have, say, an encounter between themselves and these other people. Well, then later in the game, we'd have to pay that off by having them actually do the same actions or same goals, which works fine in a story. but when you're trying to do an actual role-playing game, it's pretty counterintuitive. I had one player specifically who, even when there was definitive NPCs coming in and explaining, oh no, there's certain things that are fixed in time, you can't change them. He saw it as his personal mission, both in and out of the game, to completely derail whatever those things were, because that's not how he wanted to do it.
Right.
And yeah, so it was, the more I planned and the more I tried to force them into a certain scenario, the more, like I said, counterintuitive, the more not fun it became, basically. So it was a hard lesson to learn, but an important lesson to learn, because improv is, I think, a real good friend to a DM. Being able to roll with the punches and know what else is out there besides just your story, your head canon, so to speak. But yeah, it was a wild ride.
All right.
Time travel's tricky.
I definitely have some thoughts on this, but I want to go to Chris first. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to Daverin22 for one being here and then letting me know the stream is still working. So, because again, the numbers still look good on my side. I don't know why we stopped before, so I just got paranoid because I didn't see the chat moving for a little while. So, thank you for alleviating my anxiety, Chris. So, I guess the thing I'm thinking here is, are there elements of like prophetic and a prophetic nature of a game, or set pieces that you as the DM plan for that are worth the effort it takes to get there, when it seems like that when you try to do that, players almost instantly, either intentionally or unintentionally, balk and make it either hard to pay off, or you have to force them to pay off, which then kind of takes some of the fun away. So do you have any thoughts on that or any experience?
Yeah. I mean, I've done the same thing you've done, Kevin. I've planned multiple layers of a story and hoped the players would get through them to get to the big payoff, just to find out these are really cool layers for me, but maybe that game they just wanted to roll dice and kill things. Maybe they wanted to go in a different direction, or maybe they wanted the avenue of, instead of helping the god, they want to turn around and stab the god in the back. Like I've done all that. The only way I've ever gotten it to work is to have a player come to me and say, hey, I want this type of prophecy. And then I can weave it in the story, because then you have a player who's pushing that prophecy in a character, not the GM. Because then the players are more apt to not ruin another player's story. Players tend to like to, I don't want to say purposely screw up a game master's plan, but they like to kind of buck it because they think it's fun to watch the game master struggle and see how they scramble. And a good GM will just smile and be like, okay, cool. And then take that little note you had and just put it in 5 scenes later. Like, that's what I do. I'll have story points. And if they don't get to it, I'll just put it in later. Or I'll just completely ignore it. Or I'll just twist it a little bit. So yeah, I've done it. That's the only way I've ever gotten it to really work, other than just to not plan that in depth. Because sometimes it is a lot of work for you and very little payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be more frustration.
Definitely.
I've done it more with I did some stuff in Dragonlance and with the gods warring constantly and pulling players in different directions between the gods and trying to figure out which way they were going to go. And that's hard to do because the players may just find a shiny object and want to head towards that and forget about the story. I got a new sword. I want to make it more powerful. Well, now I need the armor to match it. It's like, well, yeah, but that sword's supposed to lead you to your path. And well, now it's leading to the new pair of boots. So.
Right.
What about you, Michael? What are your thoughts?
I've had some experience with this as well. I think my early experience matches Kevin's as well. I would have what I thought these grand moments, these scenes in my head that would play out in exactly this way, where the players would be like stunned with this realization that, oh my God, it was us all along. Absolutely something you could have happen in a movie, a TV show, or a book that would play out perfectly. But role-playing games are not a medium for that to play out perfectly. And so what I would do, and I'm probably very similar to what Kevin did before, is I would force it. I would manipulate things as the DM, which you can do and you should do, but you need to use it sparingly and in the right context to make sure that I would get to those. And almost invariably, it wouldn't be worth it, because I had to do so much manipulation to get them to that moment that the players could see what I was doing. And so then it didn't have the effect I wanted, which basically made all that work and effort pointless. So what I've started doing now, and this isn't any big secret, is I tend to make things a little bit more vague so that I can sort of pay things off by getting close. And the other thing I'll say really quickly is players are really bad about remembering stuff. Maybe you have players who are taking notes, or maybe you have those players who are actually very attentive about all things. But I have found that when I recap things, I can make small changes, and no one realizes that I made changes. So, like I'll say, you met the innkeeper who told you that X, Y, or Z, that maybe in the actual game, they told them something slightly different, or I might drop in a name. Like they told you, the Countess. I didn't mention the Countess the first time. I just said that there was this mysterious figure, but it's like 2 sessions later, I've realized that the Countess is now the person I want that to be. So when I recap, I will say, the innkeeper told you, the Countess traveled through the middle of the night 2 weeks ago and was seen in her carriage. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, of course it's the Countess, because the Countess has come up since then. And it's like, I'm relying on their bad memories to plant false memories so that it seems like I've done a better job all along. But the last thing I'll say is I've done this 2 times now, and one I'm still in the middle of, and we'll see how it works out. Shadow Spawns, my 13th Age game, which we played last night, and then my Dark Discovery game, which is on our podcast feed. I started the game with a flash forward, just like a TV show. And I didn't tell the players anything about this. And I just said, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the scene you're in. I let them role play everything out. And then I said, okay, we're going to stop right here. And then imagine you're watching a movie and 5 years earlier comes up. And now we're starting the game normally. And in both cases, I kind of went to the players and said, just trust me and go with it. And so I didn't try to hide from them what I was doing after. I wanted the initial reaction of them not knowing what's going on. So I didn't tell them ahead of time, look, this is what's happening. But after that, I said, okay, so it's now all of our collective goal to make that make sense. It's not on me to do it. It's on all of us. So you need to know that that's what we're building to. And then I would do it again. So like we would start off with like the third session, we start off with like a flashback 2 hours ahead of time. And then I trust them, and they actually did a great job. So please go listen to Dark Discovery if you haven't. And you can hear that like a certain episode start with, they're in the middle of a heist, and then we'll flash back to the beginning of the heist. And it wasn't scripted, but they knew at that point, okay, we know we have to get back to there. And so they would role play, I don't say correctly, but they'd role play in a way that they knew where they were going. Like they knew they had to get to the Lord's Manor for the heist. So they just kind of went with it, and it worked very well. I was super happy with how Dark Discovery worked out. And so far, Shadow Spawns has done the same way. So we started off with them, they're going down a river, they're being chased by people, they don't know who they're being chased by. And as I like to say, a necrotically enhanced cybernetic werewolf attacks them. Or I should say, jumps on the boat they're on and then hulks out. Rah, right? So in the last game session last night, they met with Gilpin, who is this guy who's got like part cybernetic parts. And so they're putting together, that must be the werewolf. Even though the players know this, the characters don't. But if you go back and listen, it's never clear if the cybernetic werewolf was there to attack them or for another reason. So they still don't know if he's actually the good guy or the bad guy, but they're starting to put the pieces together that must be who that is. And so it's still fun for us there's still discovery, even though they've all agreed that we know this is what we're building to. It's not all set in stone, because maybe I haven't decided yet whether or not Gilpin will be attacking them, or maybe he's there to protect them. We'll find out maybe in the next session, because we're getting really close to getting back to that moment. So that's a long-winded way to say of going back to Kevin. So what have you done differently, or what do you think you will do differently in the future, knowing that this is something that has not worked well for you in the past?
Right. Well, what I kind of did going forward from there would be I would focus more on moments, but not necessarily having moments happen in an exact certain way.
Okay.
So what I would do, for example, in that scenario, let's say, they were supposed to go back to a certain year and time and face the villain before he was the villain. Well, we would do something like that, but it wouldn't be planned out in a way where, okay, they're going to meet him at this place and say this thing to him, and he's going to respond. Like almost like the scenes were written in almost like a script, I guess you could say. And now it's more like there's certain specific things in mind that can happen, certain events that can happen, but they can happen kind of, as you mentioned, in different ways because they're vague. There might be, there's a meeting between you and the king where that can happen hundreds of different ways. As long as the scene of you meeting the king does happen, then you've got the goal. The moment still happens, basically. So, and again, being more fluid with kind of just rolling with, oh, I had this planned and now they're doing this other thing. So, okay, like Chris was saying, I'll put that on the back burner for now. We'll put that in a different folder and wait to use that one for maybe later in the game or even a different game. Maybe that moment's just not right for now. Also, I think it was probably only about 10 years ago that I discovered the session 0. And I think that really helps a game immensely, knowing everybody's going to buy in and know what they're getting into, what's expected, what kind of flavor you're going for, and know all that. It really helps, in my opinion, it really helps both the game master and the players focus in together and know, what to do.
Right.
And if they have a discussion, you want to have an idea of, like, for example, a time travel game where events are going to happen. Well, then they can agree. Okay, well, we'll have events that will happen and we'll play, like you were saying, play into those and work with those to be sure that they do happen a certain way. The open dialogue just helps a lot. It's just
if there's anything that I could do, like if I could go back, obviously if I could go back in time, I'd change, big things. But say it's like a quantum leap situation. I can only go back into my own personal life. Adding session 0's thing, again, everyone take another drink, probably would have made me such a better GM from such a much earlier age. I can think back to so many games that basically fell apart because no one was on the same page. I thought we were because I was the DM and I thought, well, we're telling this story. And in my head, I had already made up all these things. And I tried to, explain that to them. But communication is not a perfect medium in any situation, especially when you're like, 15 years old. And, so I think, again, I've said it so many times. So that's why it's the joke that whenever we say it, we take a drink, because I seriously think it's like one of the most easy thing to do, but so valuable. It solves so many problems before they become problems that, it's literally the first piece of advice I give anybody when we're talking about like how to become a better GM. Have a session 0. Then take a drink.
Absolutely,
because it will solve. If you spend any time on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, people are talking about games and they're falling apart and they have problems with the DM or they have problems with the player. About 90% of those would not be problems if they had a say it again session 0. I hope no one's drinking alcohol. I don't want to get wasted. I'm drinking water.
Me too.
Yeah.
If you had the session that shall not be named beforehand, then either you wouldn't have those problems or you might realize, what, this isn't the game I thought it was. We all agreed to play this game, but what you're saying you want to do isn't actually what I'm interested in. So maybe I don't play. And that doesn't mean we're not friends. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or I'm right. It just means that maybe I'm not a good fit. How about I leave the seat open for another player that is actually very interested in that type of game. And, it'll actually work a little bit better. So yeah, definitely 100%. If I could go back and tell it, just that I preach it from the rooftops, do those sessions that shall not be named because they're so valuable. So
Absolutely.
Anything else that you would share that you've either learned from trying to do this or you want to do or maybe not do next time?
The session shall be never named, like we said, I agree with you completely, is perfect. Definitely kind of not really on the same vein, but a little bit kind of pseudo on the same topic. I always try to talk with players to know like what they do or don't think is appropriate or what they're comfortable with. Sometimes I've had scenarios in the past where we're talking about really cool moments where I've sprung it on a player. I had a player one time, he's a very shy guy. And my idea to make him a better role player was to give him a love interest to make him the main character of the game. And boy, he was like really in on himself on that. It was really kind of confusing for him. So, having a discussion with everybody, making sure everybody knows what they're in for. And you were talking about if somebody feels like, oh, I'm out of fit, I'm going to leave. That's actually, in my opinion, it might sting at that moment, but that's so much better for your game in the long run. Every game I've ever had that's prematurely ended has been because, as you said, where people just don't see eye to eye about what the game is supposed to be, because it wasn't discussed. So that's, I mean, I think it's paramount. I mean, I agree with you. Shouting from the rooftops is the way to do it.
Absolutely. And then there's other tips I would give, but that's literally number one. Chris, we'll circle back to you. Any final thoughts on trying to set up these things, or how to do it, or specifically like maybe what not to do that we haven't already touched on?
I would throw in one thing for sure. As a GM, it's okay to want to tell your kind of story and plan every now and then. Just find players that'll buy into that. You know, I've run a Shadow of the Demon Lord game where I said, hey guys, I want to throw some, intellectual properties in here, and I have a big twist that I want to build up to. Will you guys sit down and play through this story with me? And they're 100% bought into it. Every game they're like, all right, we have no idea what's next. And half the time, neither do I, but I still have this end scene in mind. And it's really fun as a GM to kind of get to tell that story and play through that and see them, see their faces and see how excited they are. But definitely get the players to buy into that. I know too many GMs that just sit back and go, well, my job is to only tell the players stories. And I think it's okay to tell your story every now and then. Get it out of your system.
Yeah, I think it's, each game is different. And there may be a D&D session or any TTRPG that I run that is 100% about the players. And I just take what we talk about in the sessions that shall be named. They give me their characters. I create the world around them. 100%, that's fine. A separate game I might run where I'm like, okay, this is the world we're in. You need to build characters that fit this world. I think both of those are fine. And it just depends the mood, the players, what you're going for. If it's a podcast or not, what you're trying to do with that podcast. Is it entertainment? Is it educational? Is it inspirational? I think there's just different. So as crass as it's going to sound, I kind of think it's like that old pornography thing. Like, I don't know what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. I kind of feel like D&D is the same way. Like everybody knows what D&D is, but if you see someone else playing D&D, you're like, that's not my D&D. So it's like, it's not the same for everyone, but when you're in it, that I think the metaphor is breaking down, if you're in it or not, I guess. And then one big piece of advice I often will give as well is just in general, I try to prep and not plan. And that's very specific to this, type of situation. But just in general, I don't plan what I think my players will do. I prep for what I'm going to throw at them, and I will let them figure out how they get out of it. And that goes for combat. Like, I literally don't know what spells my characters have. I don't know how many hit points they have. I don't think that's my job. My job is to decide that tonight they're going to get attacked by an Umber Hulk. They're going to figure out how to survive it or kill it or run from it, and I'm loosey goosey. So if I realize like, oh shit, I'm about to kill all of them, maybe the Umber Hulk takes a turn off, gets distracted, whatever, sees a pretty butterfly and doesn't attack one turn. I'll do things like that to make sure I don't wipe a party. But for the most part, I just say tonight there's going to be an Umber Hulk. And I do not have any thoughts like when they kill the Umber Hulk or when they lead the Umber Hulk to the waterfalls, they can push it over because that would be a cool scene. Who knows? So pretty much anything I throw at my characters, it's just like, I'll let them figure out how they deal with it from here. And it has made me a better GM. Going back to that, I used to plan, and I would plan that they will fight the ogre. They will track down the Thieves Guild. They will, interrogate the king. And they never did any of those things. So now I decided, well, there's a king who's doing weird stuff. And I'll let them decide if they interrogate them or kill them or whatever the case. But, again, I don't plan for what they do. I just prep what's going to happen. And usually I just prep for that session. I'll figure out, okay, tonight we're going to start off with this. I'll improv if I need to until the session's over. And then I just plan for how the next session starts. That's all I do for prep anymore is I prep for the beginning of each session. And then I improv my way through it. And then I prep based off of what happened for the next one. So. All right. Well, again, thank you both for sharing. Hopefully those watching now or in the future or listening, if you have any thoughts of your own as a player perspective, do you like it when your GM tries to set these things up? Are you okay with it? Do you push back against it if it's not done in a certain way? I'd love for you to share. Again, when this episode comes out, feel free to throw some comments, hit us up on Twitter. But we're going to move on to the second improv game. This is the one everybody loves, and it is Where Have My Fingers Been? And in this game, we're going to act out short scenes with two finger puppets about where these fingers have been to varying levels of success, I would say. Kevin, once again, you are our guest. Would you like to go first, second, or third in terms terms of actually performing?
I'll go second. Why not?
All right. So then, Chris, you will prompt me. I will prompt Kevin. Kevin, you will close the loop and prompt Chris. And you have to sing the song. It's required. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are two friends that have found themselves stuck in quicksand.
Well, ain't this just great? I know. I mean, like as a kid, I watched like all kinds of Westerns, and I just kept thinking that quicksand would be something that I would have to. Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's where my fingers have been.
Yay.
Amazing.
All right, Kevin.
Great ending.
Thank you.
You had an ending.
Yeah, it actually, well, kind of, yeah, sort of. All right. Sorry. Jared just, the other Jared just jumped in that Chris is God. And I'm thinking we actually, in the Action 12 cinema, there was quicksand was an element, and that might be what they're talking about. All right, Kevin. So first of all, sing your song.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers have been, where do I want your fingers to be? That sounds dirty. I don't mean it that
That's
way.
loaded.
Yeah. Your fingers are at a cosplay contest, and you vehemently disagree with the person who won.
The winner is Metroid Prime. What? Are you kidding me? That thing was made out of cardboard, man. Mine was way better. Dude, yours was made out of cardboard too. Yeah, but it had the right colors and stuff.
It's important.
Yeah. But it's just a cardboard box on your head. Oh, good point. You don't even have a costume on. Gotta go. I still disagree. That's where my fingers have been.
And that's perfect.
Hey.
Congrats. That was great. All right. So, Kevin, you have to close the loop, give Chris a prompt, but first, Chris, of course, must sing the song.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers have been missing for 5 years because they were blipped away by Thanos during the snap.
Oh.
And they've just come back. I'm sorry, spoiler alert.
Wow. Very specific. What? What? There used to be I was just staring at a building. Where is it? I don't know. Who are you? Who are you? Oh, I'm Kevin. I'm Michael. Where have we been? I don't understand. Where are we now? It just doesn't make sense. Where should we go now? I'm gonna go home. I have a wife and kids. Are you sure? And that's where my fingers have been.
That took a turn. All right.
It did.
So
I love
excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for playing our reindeer games. All right. So we're going to move into sort of the unofficial end of the show. We will do question and answer if people want to have any questions. But this is cryptozoology. And this is where we talk about a monster, often from D&D, but it doesn't have to be. And we talk a little bit about the monster, maybe think of some ways that we have used this monster in the past, and then brainstorm some ways that we could use this monster in the future. Kevin, you have a monster for us tonight, sir. What are we talking about?
I do. Very fun monster. Some people might know it, some people might not. Kind of touching base with the campaign storyline that we're playing on the show right now. We are adventuring in Freeport, which is a campaign setting by Green Ronin Publishing. Basically, it's a pirate town with Cthulhu undertones. And one of the foes that you face a lot are serpent people, or Volosins, as they're referred to in the campaign setting. And they are these really cool, rad, shape-shifting humanoid serpent people who are working beneath the scenes to try to take over Freeport and cause some other nefarious purposes. And they're a good time. They're cool. I've ventured into Freeport a few times, and they kind of pop up. You can have them straightforward where they are literally humanoid serpent people that fight you. There's kind of two types. There's like the civilized type, which are, can cast spells, use weapons, fight, talk with you, things like that. And then you have the degenerate kind, which are basically just savage. They just openly attack you and try to kill you every 3 seconds. And they even have a dichotomy where they're kind of playing against each other a little bit too, but that's some spoiler territory there. But they but they're really exciting because they are shapeshifters. You can use them in a lot of different scenarios. They can kind of pop up when you least expect them. There's a moment in the campaign, for example, where if you play through the box text adventures, where you defeat a villain and you first learn about these things because you defeat this villain and he turns into one of these things and you have no idea that it was even going on. And it's pretty crazy, but you can do that with other stuff. I know the very first time we ventured into it, we had a scenario where I actually made a NPC that the party was really becoming friends with over the course of the campaign actually be one of these things in disguise, who was actually a good aligned one who was trying to actually help them, and they just didn't know that the whole time. Made for a pretty big plot twist when he revealed himself, kind of thing. But yeah, they're pretty exciting though, because like I said, with the shape shifting, they can breathe underwater, so you can do crazy stuff like they sneak up on your boat and you don't ever see them coming. They've got a whole thing where they're worshiping like a Cthulhu type god, so you can have all kinds of crazy spells. You can bust out wild and crazy stuff you wouldn't necessarily use in a regular game, because they've got access to some pretty wild and weird stuff. But yeah, they're pretty exciting. They're pretty crazy.
All right.
I like them.
And I have played Phage a few times. Mostly I've ran it, but I'm not super familiar with it like I am with D&D. So just to give maybe some other people out there who are also not as familiar, so the first thing that came to my mind was like doppelgangers. I know they're not the same thing, but do they sort of fill the same sort of role, that they have these shape-shifting creatures that are intelligent and might have their own machinations, or is it radically different?
Well, because there's two different kinds. Basically, the degenerate kind are just straight up. They just want to destroy and kill and stuff. And part of what their background is that they had their civilization fell. They tried to contract one of their gods that they follow, who is basically one of the the great old ones, again, like a Cthulhu, like a Hastur kind of character. And their civilization fell because of that. And all the degenerate ones are ones that went mad during this process. So they're just literally just savages. They can't reason or have any sort of interactions with you that are anything except just trying to kill and eat you. So they don't really do it that way. But the civilized ones can be, they could be, your evil spellcaster guy, your politician guy who's in disguise trying to manipulate people. You could do all these really cool things. So they do kind of fit that niche in that way. They're not quite as structured as doppelgangers are, where there's a definitive purpose that they're doing it for, but you could make them be that way. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And how, like in the lore of the world, is it pretty common knowledge that these things exist? Like, are the common folk that are going to work back and forth thinking, oh, that could be one of those damn things? Or is that pretty much like adventurer knowledge only as you encounter them?
Right. Well, the setting's been around for 20 years, basically. So at this point in the timeline of stuff, because they've had books coming out the whole time, they kind of are a little bit known. But in the original, and kind of like more like in the original stories, and kind of like for example, where we're at in our podcast, they're completely unknown. The heroes are discovering them for the first time and revealing them for the first time, which makes it kind of exciting because it's all open ground for them. It's nothing that nobody is aware of. So it's kind of exciting to use it that way.
Sure.
But yeah, it's all a new kind of secretive thing. So gives you a lot of playroom.
So, Chris, any thoughts on how you might use these types of creatures in a game that you're running?
Well, I really like the idea of these monsters. This would be something that I would probably reveal to the players as they go into an ancient ruin, and then all of a sudden, poof, they pop into another world. Maybe even jump in the past when the actual war was going on that destroyed their civilization, and maybe they're the reason that these things came back through with them. So maybe you aren't the heroes all of a sudden, or maybe now you have to fight them to try to, save the planet, or calm down the ones that have gone crazy, find a cure for them so they can be part of society again. Or just do the flip and let them be the kind of the secret cult that is trying to really bring Cthulhu back. Maybe they really are the shamans, and the crazy ones just go out there to try to bring them new victims or whatever they need to bring Cthulhu back. Or maybe they're the crazy ones who are just literally crazy and you just throw them out there just to beat up the party. Either way.
Yeah.
Always fun.
So the first thing that I thought of, because I always try to find a way to use these creatures that are, monsters in general that aren't to hit it with a stick until it's dead. Like what is an interesting avenue? So I like the Dave approach in the movie. So we have a politician that we need to basically kidnap and supplant with our own version. So the shapeshifter would fit the bill. But and this is this is Scooby-Doo level hijinks. In my version, the shape changers would not be able to perfectly mimic. Wouldn't be one of the natural abilities. Like they would have to do some work. So it would almost be like a thing where we'd have to try to get their password. So we'd have to get the target and have like a really awkward conversation to get them to say certain sentences so that they get like a full run of all the vowel sounds or something. Just like multiple of these set up, like they go to a restaurant and one of our characters plays a waiter and it's like constantly messes up the order just to get them upset so that the shapeshifter can hear like when they yell, what does it sound like? And, maybe get like a seduction scene so they can hear them in that kind of situation. Then we have to figure out a way to get that politician, that king or whoever kidnapped and out of the picture so that we can supplant them. And of course, at that point, we're going to mess up and grab one of the barbaric shapeshifters instead, not realizing that we've grabbed the wrong one. So now our king is being portrayed by a barbaric shapeshifter, not the smart one. I don't know. Again, we talked at the beginning about trying to set things up. That may be way too convoluted without me forcing it, but I think that would be hilarious to actually try to play that out in a game.
I just had a thought. What if you had a player who's... I know. This would be really... I think this would be fun. You have a player whose character dies in one session. Next session, all of a sudden, the party finds his character again.
There you go.
And he claims that somebody resurrected him, but it's really one of these creatures who are slowly trying to convert the rest of the party to help him bring back, one of the ancient ones or something like that. Now you're going to have to get a lot of buy-in from that player to, and get him or her involved and just have fun with it. But that could be a neat way of using them. And maybe you give clues to the other players of what he really is. So maybe they figure it out before they get there.
I love that.
So
that player kind of becomes a little bit of a GM in a way.
Right. Again, that's the buy-in. You'd have to go to the player and say, are you cool with us doing this?
Well, not only that, are you cool with the new character you're playing? Probably going to be killed by the party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Best case scenario, they find out and kill you. Worst case scenario, you kill all of them, or you convert them all to your cult and then you actually bring Cthulhu back. I like the idea of maybe like a murder mystery where, let's say, a body washes up on shore and the players, for whatever reason they're involved and they start investigating this murder and they find out the victim's not dead. Like, this is like Johnny Fisherman. They go to the Johnny Fisherman's house. Johnny Fisherman's there. And they start investigating. It turns out last time they were out fishing, Johnny fell off the boat, but just for a couple minutes. And then, they pulled him back in. Well, there's a switcheroo happened at that moment. Maybe that was an intentional sort of thing. And so now that's how they're infiltrating. And they start learning that there's actually been like a rash of accidents, but the people keep surviving. And because normally the other shapeshifters like take the body down and destroy it, whatever. And this time they didn't. So there's maybe 10% of all the Fisher people have already been changed, and this is the cult activity. They're trying to infiltrate this community, and once they have enough saturation, they can start to reveal themselves or whatever their machinations would be. So they by this, again, it's like Psych or Monk or Columbo type of thing. This one case they messed up, and that's how the players get involved. But just that moment of, well, we're investigating. I'm sorry, ma'am, for your loss, but your husband is right behind you for some reason. That's weird, and just that moment of that. What's going on? Because then is the body the doppelganger? Is it twin? Until you actually reveal the shapeshifter, there's a lot of fun that could be had with that.
Well, you could throw in a magical storm happened that night, which is why the body got free. But that's going to make them all think, well, is this all about the magical storm, or it's that whole look at one hand while the other hand's doing something different?
Oh yeah. Red herrings are great in mystery stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know I mentioned this probably before, I think actually on the Doppelganger one we've done, but one of my Eberron games that I ran, I love to do this as a DM. I just throw out like sort of like random adjectives just to see what sticks. So this character has bright red hair. This one's got freckles. This one, this sword hums when you pick it up, whatever. And I just kind of see what people attach themselves to, what sticks out, what stays around, and then I'll kind of lean into it. And I had described this NPC as having very vibrant green eyes. And I guess I had forgotten. And then later, like several sessions later, I described another NPC that had vibrant green eyes. And the player's like, that's so weird. Why, and so they put together, because they actually had better memory than me there. And so then at that point, I went back and converted that it's the same doppelganger every time, and that's like their calling card. So they always take on different forms, but they always have vibrant green eyes. And so they weren't a doppelganger before, but they became one, again, trying to keep things vague. So that's another thing you could do, is have some detail that the players catch on: eye color, hair color, tattoo, something that they keep seeing over and over again, but it's different people. And so maybe they think there's like a thieves guild that's working, or there's, again, like a cult, which maybe actually is. And then when they realize that, they actually, that's probably like a less obvious way to draw them in that something's happening. So I don't know. I think it'll be fun. So you started this, Kevin. Any other ideas you have for maybe using these in the future you'd like to share?
I like your guys' ideas a lot. The thing about the eyes is funny because one of my players actually teases me because for the longest time, key NPC that was trustworthy had golden red hair. It was just something I inadvertently did. So he makes fun of me to this day. Do they have red hair? They're a good guy. But with the shape-shifting serpent people, an idea I toyed around with would be, if you were running it, for example, if you wanted to maybe explore the different aspects of the civilization of these characters, for these different serpent folk, the two different factions, so to speak, is maybe you have, again, with player buy-in, maybe you in the beginning, you have a PC, a cleric, for example, who is one of these creatures, but is in disguise as a normal person for a purpose. Maybe they do or don't tell the party that. We sometimes play with secrets, and people don't know stuff in the games that we play in. So it's like, maybe there's a reason, and there's a bigger picture you can do. I kind of think about it like with, in the new Battlestar Galactica, who's a Cylon, who isn't a Cylon, that whole thing. It's like you can kind of play, you can make a whole campaign around that, who's a shapeshifter, who's not, kind of thing. But again, that's more of a niche kind of story. But yeah, the shape-shifting aspect is really fun, though. And then once you start getting into the fact that they're dealing with, Cthulhu and weird, creepy stuff like that, you can do all kinds of other wild stuff, too. Do they have spells that make you think you're seeing a shapeshifter, but you're really not? Can you pit the party against their allies by doing things like illusionary magic to make it look like somebody's a shapeshifter? Yeah, just the sky's the limit with crazy stuff you can do.
Yeah.
So
I just did one more I thought of quickly is so you could like mess with their expectations. Like maybe they think they're going into like a poor area of a city, and there's a bunch of like, paupers and orphans, and then they start to attack them, and they're like, oh, we're fighting all these, old, weak, people, and then they turn out that they're like the barbarian type of shapeshifters. So it seems like an odd thing for them to be attacked, but it turns out it's actually a deadly combat or a dangerous combat. Just to mess with those expectations a little bit, that it seems like it's kind of coming out of nowhere. But I don't know. But apparently, a Devoran 22 is either the player you mentioned or also agrees that red golden hair is always the good person.
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to move into the last section of the show, and this is our audience Q&A. So if anyone's watching, we've had up to like 10 people at one point. I think we got 6 right now. If anybody in chat would like to ask questions for any of us, doesn't have to be RPG related. Kind of makes sense that it would be, but if you just want to know our opinions on things, we will do our best to answer. We will reserve the right not to answer certain questions if we don't think they're appropriate. But just all good and fun. But there's a little bit of a delay but while people may be thinking if they have any questions, let's go around the room one more time. Kevin, tell people again where they can find your podcast and where they can find you, like on Twitter, social media, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. The Game Night Heroes can be found on all the social media platforms at Game Night Heroes. We also have a website, GameNightHeroes.com. And we're on, at this point, 9 different streaming platforms. All the major ones, you can get us there. And we'd love to have people listen and take the journey with us. Like I said, it's a very story driven. We're currently playing D&D, but we are going to be playing other campaigns, systems, and settings down the road. We just started with D&D. And it's a good time. I can be found at KevRan Games on Twitter and Instagram too. I'm not as active on Instagram, but I'm on Twitter quite a bit. And we would love to have you take the journey with us.
All right. So one more time again, if anybody in chat has questions, please just throw them into chat now. Chris, where can people find you and Redemption?
Redemption, pretty much find it on every podcatcher podcast platform out there. Also our website, Redemption Podcast. I'm on Twitter, Burlew_Chris. And you catch me here every now and then, plus on the Redemption Discord, the RPG Academy Discord, a few other Discords that I belong to. Not that I spend a ton of time on them, but once a day I usually check them. Where can you be found, Michael?
Pretty much everything I do can be found at the RPG Academy. Again, we're on all the podcasting platforms as well. We do this show, Detention, live every other Wednesday. So next Wednesday will not be Detention. The Wednesday after that will be. On the alternating Wednesdays, Tom runs a 5e campaign, D&D 5e. They're currently running Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but he tells me they are so far off book at this point, they probably shouldn't even be calling it that. And then on the same day of the week as same weeks as Detention, on Tuesdays, I run a 13th Age game called Shadow Spawns. So that was yesterday. So 2 weeks from yesterday, we'll be doing that again. And then I play some video games, mostly Monday through Friday around 2 o'clock. I'm currently playing Dragon Warrior 2. I've played through Final Fantasy, played through Legend of Zelda. I've done a few other games. After this one, I think I'm going to jump systems into Sega Genesis and play Shining Force. So if that is interesting to you, you can catch me Monday through Friday, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And all the stuff ends up on YouTube as well after the fact. And most of the stuff ends up on audio only. And then lastly, Farm to Fable. If you like Smallville, I'm doing a complete 10-season rewatch podcast. We just finished season 2. We're about to start season 3. So we do have a question from Reginosaurus Rex, which is a great name. I like that.
Yes,
who is the next snake person in disguise? So I guess we could, it could be like my wife, my kids, my dog. But in the game, I'm currently running Shadow Spawn. It's the only game I'm actually running. And I'm going to go with, I'm going to say Gilpin. That is the first wizard to the Dwarven King, who is very likely also a necrotically enhanced cybernetic werewolf, but maybe that's the disguise and they're actually a snake person. So Chris, I guess Redemption. Who's the snake person disguised in Redemption?
Wow, that'd be a tough one because we're in Star Wars.
Surely there's a shape-shifting race in Star Wars.
The Claudites. There's that one, and there's probably others that I don't know.
What would you do for a Claudite bar?
Well played, sir. Right now, I would smile.
Yeah.
Probably the character that the NPC that they created, Mauve. I could have her be a shapeshifter in disguise who they think is actually helping them, but may not be.
All right, and then Kevin, so what about you?
Well, definitely. There was a turnip salesman that they met in like episode 2. Yeah, he's definitely leader of the Serpent People.
At some point, did his turnip cart get destroyed and he yelled, "My turnips"?
No, but that's what we'll do in the final battle.
Of course,
we'll get that going for sure.
Excellent. All right, I got another question. Devorin22, what is your favorite system or tabletop to play other than D&D? Kevin, we'll start with you. Do you have a second? And that's assuming D&D is your favorite. I don't know that it is, but what are a couple other games that you like to play besides D&D?
Of course, yeah. D&D is always, that's where I started. That's where we still do. I like Fantasy Age by Green Ronin. It's awesome. The stunting system and everything is really, really cool. I used to play Vampire Masquerade back in the day, so I've got a fondness for that. Mutants and Masterminds is a fun one that I love a lot too.
I agree.
And lots of Cortex. I'm really big on Cortex. I'm not sure if you guys have played that at all. They did like the Firefly role-playing game, Serenity role-playing game back in the day. It's very cool. I'm into more like narrative games. I do want to play some of the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, and also the Genesis system. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but really, really want to dive into that because it's the kind of flavor I like. So,
and what about you, Chris?
Well, obviously, I'm big on the Star Wars, the Fantasy Flight one, which you mentioned Genesis. That's what kind of started Genesis, was that system. I have played some Genesis. It's not bad. My only critique is it takes a while to build characters, because since it is a generic system, you kind of have to figure out how you're going to make things work in your system. I've said it before, I'm a big Shadow of the Demon Lord fan. I really like the simplicity of that game, how rules light it is. And I'm also a big fan of the system, because there's a lot of Cthulhu tones to it, as well as there's a tiny bit of steampunk in there. So I kind of like that. It's not your typical just straight up fantasy world. That one's also fun because you've got the insanity and corruption that really do change what players do. Anything that has an insanity skill where it's like, oh, well, you're going to kick that door open when you hear the screaming woman on the other side? All right. Roll that willpower check. Yep, a demon's ripping her head off. That's 3 insanity points. Oh, that puts me over the limit. Well, should have thought it before you kicked the door open.
Yeah.
It does tend to lead to sometimes almost too realistic gameplay, because you're like, oh, well, don't know her. Tough luck. And you keep going down the road type thing. But I really like that one. I have played Dungeon World quite a bit. I like that one. I really like Dungeon World if you want to bring new players in. Let me show you how to role play. I don't want to show you how to roll dice. Let me just show you how to role play. And that's really good to just get them involved. I love systems where the players go, what can I do? And I can say literally anything.
Yeah.
You describe what you want. I'm going to tell you what you have to roll, and we'll make the story. Those are more my systems. I do like Mutants Masterminds. I like coming up with backstories for superheroes and how they got their powers and their weaknesses and stuff like that. Man, I've played a ton of systems. Yeah. Hollowed Earth. Is that what's called? Hollowed Earth.
Hollow Earth
Expedition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew it was Hex. I like that one. That's a fun one too.
That game's awesome too. Yeah.
I think I like the setting on that one with the Thule Society and, trying to, I guess beat the Nazis to, finding magic and stuff like that. It's kind of neat. But otherwise, I play just a ton of tabletop games.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm obsessed with DC Deck Builder, but I think I've played that almost every other day or every third day for the past 3 weeks. But
wow.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
They have crisis mode where you can play it co-op or anyways, I could go on that one for a while. But what about you, Michael?
So I'll just do a quick plug in case anyone is watching now or in the future that isn't already familiar with our show. We do a show here called The Trials, and every one of those are us playing a game we've never played before. And usually we get the designer or one of the designers of the game to run it for us. So if you are also interested in a bunch of other systems, go check out our Trials. We have a bunch of them on there, and they're a great representation of that system. So I really like 13th Age, but that's basically a kissing cousin to D&D, so I kind of count it as a D&D game. It's got some really cool indie stuff on top of it, role play focused, but it's basically D&D. Savage Worlds is a great game. I really like Savage Worlds quite a lot.
Deadlands is awesome.
Deadlands is a ton of fun, absolutely. My superhero game is Marvel, the old face rip game, which is not a good game. It is not a good game, but I love it a lot, and I like to play it quite a lot. Dread. If I'm running a one-shot, Dread is my go-to one-shot system. If you're not familiar, Dread is you use a Jenga tower for the game. It's mostly for horror, but it can be used for other systems or other genres. And I run a Scooby-Doo Dread game, which might be the best thing I've ever designed. And I'm working on my own role-playing game. It is so much fun. It's almost like a real life. So basically, it's been 20 years since Scooby died. And the players are brought back together Clue style. So they haven't even seen each other in 20 years. They're all brought together in this mansion for one night to figure out who killed Scooby-Doo. And it's so
amazing.
Much fun. It is so much fun. So Dread is absolutely one of my favorite one-shots. Wushu, it's a really indie game, but it's one of the games that is really focused on role play. You only have 3 stats. Your card is literally a note card, your character sheet. The more descriptive you are, the more dice you get to roll. So it kind of encouraged you to be super descriptive. It kind of helps. Fiasco is a ton of fun. Fate.
Yep.
There's just so many games out there. And I would say I started with D&D. It's the first game I ever played. It's still my favorite. I still love it. But I actually play other games more than I play D&D now. Like almost probably 80% of the games I play or run are not D&D at this point. And that's not even including the fact that I'm designing my own and I'm playtesting it a lot. But every now and then, I still like to kick out that D20. I know it's a terrible swingy variable system, but to me, there's nothing more fun than rolling a 20 on a natural 20. I don't care. I could run 2d6 all day in whatever Dungeon World, and getting a 12 on 2d6 does not do anything for me like a 20 is on a D20. And then one more, Masks. That is probably my favorite Powered by the Apocalypse game I've played. It's a superhero game, but it's more like Young Justice. It's very angsty teenage drama. Again, more focus on the role play than the dice. And then secondly would be Monster of the Week, because I love Buffy, I love Scooby-Doo, I love Supernatural TV show, and that's what that system is. So hopefully there's a bunch of recommendations in there. If anything sparked your interest, please go check it out. Throw some love to an indie creator, buy their game, check out our trials. If there's anything that sounds interesting, you'll get to hear how it goes. Those great questions. Thank you both. We'll one more time, we'll open it up in case anybody else has questions, because this is like one of the most fun things we do. So one more time quickly, Kevin, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Game Night Heroes or at GameNightHeroes.com. I am at Twitter and Instagram at Kevran Games.
Excellent. And Chris, where can people find you?
Twitter, Burlew_Chris. It's always the easiest way to find me. Or join the RPG Academy Discord or the Redemption Discord. Those are the two main ones I'm on.
All right. And then I will also plug our Discord as well. We have a channel there for setting up tabletop simulator games. That's Chris and I have actually been playing DC Better together quite a lot. Sounds like you've been cheating on me because you've been playing more than I have. But we try to set up games pretty regularly through there for like board games, card games through there. We use tabletop simulator mostly, but not exclusively. Yeah. And we have an every other Tuesday open invite that we play. So not yesterday. So 1 week from yesterday, if you have Tabletop Simulator and want to play some board games with us, we play DC Deck Builder, Marvel Legendary, Horrified, the Marvel United game. What else have we been playing on there?
Sentinels of the Multiverse.
Sentinels of the Multiverse is one we've been playing a lot. And we've got a few that we want to get to, but they're a little bit heavier. So we're trying to find the right mind space to sit down and play like a 5-hour game on tabletop. You gotta be ready for that. But there's some heavier weighted games that I want to get to eventually. But I'm still loving DC Deck Builder, so I can play that pretty much anytime.
Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to come play Battlestar Galactica with me.
Oh.
You need 5+
that game
players.
Rocks.
You can't play it with 2 or 3 because you figure out the Cylon too quick and you just throw them in the brig and they're done. 5 players minimum. There's even a tabletop simulator that has every expansion, which I have no idea how to play all of them, because if you try to buy them in real life, they're $300 a piece.
Yeah.
I have the base set and a happy wife.
That's all I have too, just the base.
Yeah, I don't buy all the expansions because the happy wife is important.
Yeah.
I would love to jump on there with a few people and 4 other people at least and try some of those expansions. I mean, obviously we'd have to read the rules and figure them out, but it'd be kind of neat. I know there's a whole expansion where you can play the Cylon leaders. I have no idea how that works. It'd be kind of neat to try to play the other side.
And this is totally self-serving, but we get one more time. Any questions, throw them in chat. You were supposed to play Firefly Legendary the other day. Did you get to play it? How was it?
I liked it. That was me and my wife and a couple other people. We played through the first 3 episodes of the show. And the first time through, poor luck, we drew the big bad ship that just crushed us after like 4 turns.
Oh.
So we hit the reset button and went, well, we're going to call that poor luck. And then we went through the 3 episodes and never took another hit.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
But part of it is we figured out the first time how to do it, what to buy, what not to buy. I really like the mechanics of it because you have to protect the ship as well as your characters, because you're actually playing one of the characters. So you can take damage, Serenity can take damage, and each one has a different, mission, just like the show. Like the first episode, you're trying to collect salvage, then you jump into the train job, and then you just go from there. You can play the whole campaign, and the way it's set up is after the first 3 episodes, it's kind of like an intermission where you can get flaws and things for your characters, and then you just pick up with the next 3 episodes. I haven't figured out if you're supposed to reshuffle the hero deck or not, but I'll have to figure that part out. But each episode only took like a half an hour to 45 minutes to play. So it wasn't like a normal, hey, we set this mastermind up and 3 hours later, we're just now figuring out we can't win.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Legendary, but that is the downside is it takes so long to get organized. And if you get just a bad draw or the mastermind or whatever, and then you're like, I know we're going to lose, but it's going to be like another 45 minutes before we actually lose. So do we just cancel now? Yeah. It's one of those things.
You know pretty quick how you're going to do in this one. The neat thing too is when you roll cards into the verse, you don't reveal them.
I played the Alien version. You have to
yeah,
pay
we played Alien too.
to flip them over to see what they are.
Yeah, you have to pay, and then if it goes so far it gets pushed into the combat zone, then you flip it over. And then you have to resolve it each time it's your turn. So I thought that was a neat mechanic. I haven't played the Alien one, so that's kind of next on my list.
The Alien one's intense. Those aliens can really, really build up as they kind of come out. You can really get overwhelmed real quick in that game, in my experience.
I've played the Alien one time, the Alien version of Legendary, and we basically, the very last player that was still alive had one turn before they were going to die, and they got exactly the card they needed, and we won the game. And I've said,
amazing.
It will never get better than that, so I will never play that game again. Like, it literally was like, we all died, one player left, last possible turn. If he doesn't win that turn, we lose. And he got exactly what he needed. It's like, okay, I'm good. I'll remember that forever. Never need to play it again. Thank everybody for watching. I love the questions. Thank you so much for doing that. But I think we're going to wrap up here. So one last thing for the Discord. We have an open Discord. Anyone can join, but you have to get invited because when we first made it public, we got a bunch of people jump in there spamming a bunch of stupid stuff. So we just we made it closed, but anyone can get invited if you ask me. So if you'd like to join our Discord, it's a small community, very cool. We talk mostly about Marvel shows and toys and comic books and movies and TVs and every now and then role-playing games. But we also do set up these tabletop games like Chris and I are talking about. Just hit me up on Twitter. Let me know you want an invite. I'll send it along. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed it. I thought you did great on the show. Best of luck to you and the podcast. I hope we get a few extra listeners your way. If you'd like to come back in the future sometime, happy to have you.
Oh, I'd be thrilled to. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
All right. Excellent.
It was a lot of fun.
Do the awkward wave out while I look for the stop button. See ya.